Hey guys, it's Lucas here again from DIY Garage Projects. In one of our other videos you saw me print out this 3D printed fidget spinner. I realised one of the things that it doesn't have, which all the bought ones do, is the little caps that sit in the middle bearing that you can actually hold on to. So today I'm going to design some custom ones and print them out. So to start with, I need to take some measurements of the fidget spinner bearing. Really nothing to do with the fidget spinner, but just the bearing itself. I'm going to use the back of the calipers to measure the inside diameter of the hole, which is about 8mm. And then we'll also want to measure the outside of that inner ring of the bearing, which is roughly 11.6, and then the bearing itself, just pop that up, which is about 22mm. So 8, 11 and a half, 12 and 22. So they're the three measurements I need. Okay, so now we can start using Sketchup to design our caps. Mine's set up for 3D printing, so we can just click on this MakerBot template thingy and get rid of it. And basically what we want to do to start off with is I'll just first use the orbit tool, which is O on the keyboard, just to get us orientated in space a little bit. And then what I want to do is use the circle tool, the C on the keyboard, to create a circle. Now everything we're doing here is based on the radius, so just be careful that you're not making things twice the size as what you need them. So to start off with, we'll make the actual cap part that our fingers will sit on. So that needs to be about 24mm wide to be a little bit bigger than the bearings. So let's make the radius there 12. And you'll see I'm just, as I draw the circle out, I can then type the size of the circle and hit enter, and that will apply it to the actual circle on screen. Now for the depth of this, I'll actually use the push-pull tool, which is P on the keyboard, or this little tool here. And you can just click on the circle and drag that up, and once again we'll type the size that we want. So let's say 3mm for that one, which is probably a little bit thicker than what you may need, but my 3D printer at the moment has some issues where the first few layers seem to print very thin, or it doesn't sort of, it gets a bit squished at the start, so I'm just making mine a little bit fatter. Then we'll go back to the circle tool by pressing C again, and we want to find the center. Now sometimes the auto snapping won't find that center, so to trick it into it, you can just come to the edge of the circle, hover over the end line, and then trace across until you find that center. Now this is the little part that sits on the inside of, or the inside part of the bearing, to stop the main part from actually rubbing on the rest of the bearing. So this circle, that needs to be 12mm diameter, so we'll make the radius 6, hit enter, and do the same thing, push pull, drag that up, and it only needs to be fairly thin, so I'm going to make mine 0.5mm. And at that point I'm going to hit O to orbit again and just have a bit of a look around. So that's basically what the fidget spinner cap will be. Obviously there'll be some parts that go in the middle of the bearing, but what I'm going to do first of all is just show you how to actually customize it, and then I'll make a copy of that and draw the two different pieces. So basically what we want to do is obviously work on the underside of this now, so I can switch the camera view by clicking on the camera menu, going to standard views, and then clicking bottom, or you can also press Command 2 to jump to that view. And for my customized cap, I'm going to actually just put some text on here. So I'm going to write DIY, and I'm going to change the font size to say about 10 millimeters high. And I'll place that on. And I don't want this perfectly centered because it looks a little bit off-sided when you do that, so I'm just going to shift it across a little bit to the right. I think about there looks about even. Alright, so that's drawn that 3D text as a flat line on top of our cylinder, just on that face. What we want to do now is I'll just press the spacebar to cancel the orbit tool and give us a selection again, the selection tool, and I'm just going to make sure that our text is selected, and then I'll right click on that, and we want to explode it, which basically breaks each letter out into its own shape. Once I've done that, I can click it again and select intersect faces with model, and what this will do is actually make those lines, or cut those lines into the surface of our circle, so that this part here is a separate shape to this part, etc. And then what we can do is once again use our push-pull tool, P on the keyboard, and basically drag that. I should unselect this first. So P for push-pull, and then basically push the letters in, and I'm going to indent them into the model. And in my case, I'm going to do 2 millimeters. Once again, do that for the I. Just hit 2 on the keyboard and enter. And same thing for the Y. Push it up a little bit and then hit 2 and enter. And that's given us our indented text, which when we print it will give us a DIY on our fidget spinner cap. Alright, so now that that's done, I can now select by pressing the space bar to get back to the space tool and selecting the whole object. And what we're going to do is just click on M on the keyboard to select the move tool. Start dragging that across, and you'll see I've kept that in line with the red or the x-axis so that it goes straight across in one direction. And as I'm doing that, I'll press the Option key, which will actually give me a copy rather than moving the object itself. And just put that across. No, undo that. Control Z. Might just move this view around with the Orbit tool. Just O on the keyboard. Zoom out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing better. So select that again. Press M for move. Drag it across the red axis. And press Option, and now we've got a copy of our cap, and they've both got the DIY in there, so it's an exact copy of what we had. And now we can start working on the center part. So rather than just using circles again, this time I'm going to use a slightly different technique, because I actually want to put a bevel on these parts where the two caps will fit together, so that when they connect, they can actually press in without sort of getting jammed up on each other. So to do that, what we're going to do is this time, rather than drawing a circle, we're going to draw a rectangle, which is R on the keyboard, or you can select this shape drop down and hit rectangle or circle, etc. And from the center there, once again, if you're having trouble finding that center, just highlight the edge of the circle first, and then the center should appear as you move your mouse back in. We're going to try and draw a rectangle on its end. Sometimes can be a bit difficult. I'm just going to hit escape here to cancel that, and then try moving this view around a little bit so that we can actually try and draw our rectangle. Press R again and try to get one that's standing up like that. Alright, so for this section I'm going to make the, once again we can type in our dimensions down the bottom here. I'm going to make this rectangle 4 millimeters across and let's go, how big did I want to make this? Let's go 4 millimeters high also. Just rotate that around so we can see what we're working with. Now for the inside of that circle, I'm going to once again choose the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw another rectangle there that's 4 millimeters high and let's go 2.5 millimeters across. And what I'll do then is just rotate this around the other way and I'll hit the space bar again to get the select tool, and I'm just going to select just that new square that we drew and delete that. I could probably delete this line as well. Zoom in a little bit and I'll press L for line, which is this tool here, and I'm just going to take a small section of this out. So I'll draw a line from corner to corner. It doesn't have to be exact as long as it's got a bit of an angle to it. Once again, press the space bar to select just that corner piece that we drew and hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of that. Once again I'll hit O for orbit so that we can move around. And I might, before I do this, I will draw the opposite part as well on this piece, and then I'll do both of them together. So the idea of what I'm going to do here, I'll just quickly show you, is we're going to use the follow me tool. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to draw another circle, press C on the keyboard, and we want to come up from this center. Oops, don't want to draw it there, undo that. Once again, find the center and come up from there along the blue or the Z axis. And I'm just going to draw a circle here. It doesn't have to be any particular size, just as long as it's in the center of our other circle down here. And then go to Tools, select Follow Me, and basically we're going to click on this piece here and then bring it up to the outside of this top circle, which will basically extrude that shape around that path. Okay, so if we just find the point that's in line with where our shape was, that will draw a complete circle. The only problem with this is because of the size of the shape we're actually working with, you'll see it struggles. Sketchup doesn't like working at such small dimensions. So we've actually lost all these faces in here, and that's hollow, which isn't going to work very well when we can try and 3D print it. So I'm just going to undo what we've done for the moment. And I'll get rid of this circle for now. And I'm going to actually just work on what we need to extrude over on this one, and then I'm going to scale both pieces up so that SketchUp can get the faces right and we do the follow me operation, and then I'll scale it back down again. So basically for this side, we're once again going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to try and find the center, And this one's going to have a piece that goes through the middle of the hollowed out section that we were making on the other piece. So we'll have a male and a female. So this one here I'm going to make a little bit taller. This is actually going to be 6.5. I think I'm doing this the right way around. 6.5 by 2.5, I think. Nope, other way around. 6.5 by 2.5. Still do it the same way. 2.5 by 6.5. And I think I've mucked up my dimensions a bit there. Let me just undo that. For rectangle, center. Sometimes it's a bit hard to draw it on the right plane that you're actually trying to draw it on. Okay, so the height, yeah, okay, so 6.5 by 2.5, and that looks a bit better. Now that width there, 2.5 millimeters, if we use our tape measure, which is Command D, or under Tools and Tape Measure, basically that should match up with this measurement here. So when this circle is drawn, the hollowed out part in the middle will be 2.5 millimeter radius, 5 mil across, and that's going to match up with this center piece here, which will fit inside that circle. Right, so then we also want to make a section that will sit inside the bearing as well. So I'm going to draw another rectangle. Once again, trying to get it to go the right way for me. I may have to just hit escape to cancel that. And you'll find with drawing rectangles, if you change the perspective of how you're looking at the model, that will change the way it wants to draw the rectangle. So if I look down a little bit lower with that current rectangle sort of facing us, then I should be able to draw it a little bit more easily going in the direction that I want. Sort of flash of red, come on. Okay. So this one here, I'm actually having the first cap that we drew is going to come a little bit further through the middle of the bearing. I measured the width of the bearing itself, and that's 7 millimeters. So this one we made 4. I'll make this one about 2.5 just to have a little bit of a gap in between. 2.5 times, so we've got 2.5 wide, it's 5 overall, and this one needs to be 1.5. So just to double check what I've done here, let's once again hit O for the orbit tool. So our measurement from the center on both of these, I'll grab my tape measure again. So from the center out to here should be 4 millimeters, which means that all of this stuff will fit inside the hole in the bearing, which is 8 millimeters across. Okay, that looks good. So now what we can do is zoom out a bit. If we select, pressing the space bar and selecting everything there, we can now scale this up, and I'll just go across this diagonal from the bottom corner to the top corner. And what I want to do, when you select the scale tool, you'll see you've got some options here. So if you hold down the option key, that will scale it out around its center, or the center of what you've got selected. In this case, I want to do that so that it doesn't move around as we scale it up and then scale it back down. So I'll hold down the Option key and just scale this up. And I'm going to scale it up just to make it easy. I'm going to scale it up 10 times. So I'll type 10 on the keyboard and hit enter. I'm not sure that actually works. Let me just try that again. Okay, so scale 10 times. There we go. Now we should be able to actually use our Follow Me tool to do our extrusions. Try and get this in the middle. So I'm just zooming in and out here with the scroll wheel on my mouse. Okay, so once again, I'll do a circle here, and I want to come up from the middle of this part. So once again, try and find the center, and then if you raise up from there, you should see a little blue line, which means that you're going straight up on the z-axis above the point that you've got marked out. Once again, just draw a circle, doesn't have to be any particular size. Go to Tools, Follow Me, select the face that we want to extrude. Doesn't appear to be a valid path. Just make sure I've got the right thing there. Alright, so and then find the point where that comes around a full 360 degrees. And in this case now you can see that we've actually got this surface filled in properly. Alright, and then we can do the same thing across here. I can hit select and just get rid of that circle for now. So we're done with that side. And we'll do the same thing over here. So once again, C for circle, find that center point, which in this case is a little bit easier. Come up and just draw a circle there. Tools, Follow Me, and we'll do, actually before I spin this one around, what I want to do is actually put a bevel on this edge as well. So we'll do the same thing there. I'll press L for line and just pick a point. It doesn't have to be any specific size, just a little bit of a tip on it so that it's easier to press the two together. Once again, I'll hit the spacebar to select and just grab the tip of that, hit the delete key. We can zoom back out again and go to Tools, Follow Me, and we'll just do the same thing on both of these parts to turn them into cylinders. And there we go, there's our fidget spinner caps, ready to hopefully fit together nicely. So once again, spacebar, just select and get rid of this temporary circle. And what I want to do now is scale that back down to size. So just go for orbit, spacebar, select everything, and as long as we hit scale and use the same diagonal that we used before, we should be able to scale that back straight down into the same position where it was. Once again, I'll hit the Option key, start scaling it down, and then I can type in here 0.1, which will bring it down by a factor of 10. I think I actually moved it then just before I scaled it, so I'll just undo that and try that again. So Option, drag it down, and then hit 0.1 on the keyboard and hit enter, and we should be back hopefully where we started. Excellent. Just have a look around there one last time, and that's pretty much it. That's our fidget spinner caps. Now what I can do with that is hit File, and I've actually got an STL plugin in my SketchUp, so I can export that straight to STL format which is the same format that my slicer takes in order to be able to slice that up for 3D printing. So I'll export that and save it. Spinner caps. That should be exported. I actually haven't saved the file itself, the Sketchup file, so I can also save that as spinner caps, and that will save as a Sketchup model or an SKP file. Okay, so now we can quit out of Sketchup and open up Slicer, which is the 3D printer slicing software. And we can open Finder. And we can drag our STL file that we exported into Slicer, which will give us our parts ready to print. And this is sort of similar. You can zoom in and out. You can rotate around to see what you've got. And that looks pretty good. I'm just going to change a couple of print settings to make these a bit more solid. I'll actually do fill density of 100%. So that the parts are actually solid rather than it printing. Oops, I have to change to Rectilinear fill pattern. Yes. Let's just change that first and then go 100%. And I also don't want a brim on this. Make that 0. And I can just have a look now and preview that to see how it's going to print. Make sure that everything fits on our print bed, and you can zoom up and down through the layers to see, make sure that everything is going to be nice and solid and print how it's supposed to print. And then I can export the G code to my SD card, which will go straight into the printer and allow me to print this out.